Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode on Forged from Iron. In this video, we're going to be going over leg training and the fundamentals of the lower body when it comes to weightlifting. Thank you guys once again for tuning into these videos, and I hope that you come away with some information that you can take to help better your own workouts out of this. So here, the running joke with leg training is that it's the most commonly neglected body part. At least it tends to be most commonly neglected among guys. This is bad. Don't neglect your leg training because they are considered to be one of the strongest muscles in the body. And so just that fact alone should tell you that you should not be avoiding leg training, however bad it is. Now, when approaching training these muscles in the lower body, they tend to be grouped with a general term that describes a particular area of the muscles. This may sound confusing, but will make more sense as I continue to explain. So for example, the quadriceps are the muscles in the front of your thigh, and it is actually a group of 4 muscles, as the name suggests, by quad. They're divided based on which area of this overall bigger group of muscles they're located in, so whether it's the inner or outer part of the thigh, etc. And these muscles comprising of the quadriceps cause extension of the leg, so basically straightening of the leg from the knee joint. So if you think about this being your knee joint and it's bent at a 90-degree angle, your quadriceps run over basically along your femur, which is going to be the bone that essentially goes from your knee to your hips, or the other way around, vice versa. And the muscle fibers will run along in the same direction. So since it's located on the front of your thigh, and I guess therefore on the front of your femur, when it contracts and it shortens in this direction, it will cause the bone below your knee joint to pivot upwards, thus causing leg extension from the knee joint. Similarly, the hamstrings are a group of 3 muscles taking up the backside of your thigh. And the action of these muscles is to bend the leg at the knee joint antagonistically to the quadriceps. So if we think about sort of the opposite function that would occur with the hamstrings at the back of your thigh, when they contract, rather than doing this action, they perform the opposite, where contraction of this muscle here will cause your leg to bend at the knee in the opposite direction. So as I mentioned before, all of these individual muscles within the bigger group, such as the quads or the hamstrings, have slightly different insertions and origins and all that. However, generally, they're all going to run from around the hip area. So for example, at the top of the femur or around your pelvis to some point around the knee joint. As I mentioned earlier, the contraction of these fibers in this direction will cause either leg extension or bending of the leg at the knee. Next up, in major leg muscles, we have to take note of the glutes that additionally assist in hip movement, as their function is to extend the hips as well as externally rotate the hips. Finally, it should also be taken into account that indigestion. Finally, we should also be aware that there are 5 adductor muscles on the inside portion of the thighs, and these muscles help function to bring the thighs closer in together towards the midline of your body. Now, there are many other smaller muscles in the lower body. However, when it comes to weight training, we will mainly be focusing on the ones I've listed off, as A, they take up the majority of your leg, and B, they are responsible for most of the major movements generated by the lower body. Now, getting into exercises, it's going to be squats galore pretty much. Whenever you're doing leg training, you don't want to skip out on squats because of the fact that we're literally targeting everything with this exercise. As you see here, we're getting bending of the leg at the knee as we go down into the eccentric portion of the movement, and as we come back up in the concentric portion, we're seeing the leg extension. So we're getting both quadricep and hamstring activation in this exercise already. On top of that, at the very bottom of the movement, we're going to want to ensure that we take it as low as we go. ATG stands for ass to grass. And the reason for that is because at the bottom, we're able to activate the glutes the most to get out of that position, because of the fact that not only are we slightly externally rotated at the bottom of the movement, when we're coming back up, we're taking advantage of extension of the hips to activate those glutes. On top of that, we're also involving our adductor muscles as we're bringing our thighs closer together as we come up in the concentric portion of the squat. So as you can see, the squat here is really hitting every muscle of the leg and is crucial that you don't skip this exercise. Now, there are very many variations of squats. You could do barbell squats. You could do them on a Smith machine. You could do squats holding a dumbbell, which is known as a goblet squat. However, my personal recommendation always has been and will be the barbell squat, simply because you can load up so much weight on this exercise. And on top of that, you're also getting a very strong core and stabilizing muscles, because of the fact that if you're not doing this on a Smith machine, it's going to be much harder to hold that weight there in a stable position. So let's get into the basic fundamentals of form when it comes to a squat. Now, there's two variations of squats. If you get more advanced, there's high bar and low bar, which is basically just addressing the position at which the bar is on your back. So high bar obviously means the bar is higher up on your back versus the opposite, which would be low bar. Pretty self-explanatory. If you're just beginning out, you can just basically disregard high bar, low bar squatting and just find the one position that works for you until you get more advanced and you can safely perform and change up your form to do a high bar or low bar variation. A cue that works for me best personally is to retract your shoulder blades and sort of brace your back as you get under the bar. And I'll try to have a visual on screen to show you what I'm talking about to help with this description. But you'll create sort of a T shape in your back that acts as sort of a shelf where you can place the bar and hold a lot of weight without it being uncomfortable or even painful. And it can take some getting used to creating this sort of shelf and the T shape kind of with your back. So I would experiment around with it. Always make sure you warm up before doing a squat. This is one of the main reasons I would recommend doing so, just so you're able to get into this position as comfortably and efficiently as possible, and you're able to ensure that you get into this position every time you perform once you get into your heavier sets of squats, for example. Because the squat especially is one of those exercises that you can seriously hurt yourself if you don't do it correctly or responsibly. Now, as given by now, you're going to want to seriously flex your core during this exercise. This is also why you see a lot of people using weighted belts mainly for this exercise, because this is one of the exercises that demands you brace your core the most, simply because of the fact that you need that stability, or else as you are coming up on the squat, you will fall over, and that is not fun. When I was starting off, one of my friends that was more into lifting than me at the time, this is just based off personal experience, but his suggestion was to sort of think about it as you're sitting back in a chair to get this range of motion. However, not exaggerated, obviously. Basically, that just prevents you from leaning too far forward, because if you lean too far forward, there's probably a multiple number of reasons that could be causing that. A, the weight could be too heavy for you and your body is just trying to compensate to get the weight up, so you're not actually training your legs efficiently. Or B, you're not stable enough, or something is out of line with your form, and that's just issue you need to fix. Like, you can actually lift that weight, it's just you're not performing the exercise correctly enough to be able to lift that weight. Basically, all of the reasoning behind that is because the goal is to keep the bar path as relatively straight up and down as possible, because this is just the most efficient distribution of force for you to lift the weight up. So you're going to be much stronger if the bar path is straight versus if you have a curved bar path. If you're able to keep your form golden, it's just going to not put yourself at a disadvantage when you're doing this exercise already. You may have to also experience around a little bit with your feet width as to what is going to feel the most comfortable for you and what position you're the strongest in. For me personally, around shoulder width works best, and I slightly angle my feet out a little bit, similarly to the deadlift. And depending on things such as your ankle mobility and just flexibility in general, it could affect how low you can actually reach on the squat. I would highly suggest you always try to get at least 90 degrees in the knees, if not further. However, I do believe the minimum should be 90. And don't forget, we're trying to get the full range of motion to get the full activation of the muscles. So if we're not bending our knee all the way, we're not getting full activation of the hamstrings, which means we don't have as much range of motion to extend with. So we're not getting full activation of the quads as we could be. And on top of that, since we're not getting to the very bottom, that's even less glute activation. So you're really going to want to go as low as possible. That's where I guess the term ass to grass stemmed from. And then after you load up your heavy squats and all that, the next exercise you can move into is some sort of isolation exercise for the hamstrings or quads. I would recommend lunges are a really good option because it hits sort of both at once essentially. So this is a really good burnout exercise after your squats, and I'll have a video up on screen of me doing it. I like to take a step in the middle between every lunge, so I sort of come back to a neutral standing stance and then perform my next lunge. Some people prefer to just go straight into lunge after lunge, and it just depends on personal preference. I like to sort of take that pause to make sure that my form is going to be good for the next rep. So yeah, here as you can see, we're getting both extension of the knee as we come up, and as we go down, we are bending the knee as well. However, this is going to be more of a quad driven exercise, as the hardest part is going to be coming up, so extension of the leg. And then finally, you could also hit something like one of the leg machines. I'm on the leg extension machine. However, I do recognize there has been a lot of criticism, especially in the gym community, of the fact that these machines can be horrible for your legs. And I would say that if you perform them with proper form and don't overload a stupid amount of weight that you can't handle, it should be fine. Now, I'm just going decently light here, just trying to get a burnout, more so training for volume and high reps than going super heavy here. That's what the squat is for. Here I'm doing a leg extension, which is going to be focusing on the quads. I guess that's just what I felt like doing that day. There are also machines that target the hamstring more, and if you think of it, it's just the opposite of what this machine is, where instead of having to use force to extend your legs, you have to basically use force to do a leg curl. Anyways, that about wraps it up for this video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Also hit that bell to turn on notifications. Also, make sure you're hitting the gym. That's it for me today, folks, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.